406. A rainy Tuesday afternoon. It's going to be raining all week, Brandon.
Yes.
It's a wet week here in Acadiana.
A very wet week in Acadiana. We can expect rain all throughout, but at least we're not getting hit with a Category 4 storm. Man, I feel bad for those people in the Carolinas.
I do too. And not that this makes it any better, but or actually it could in many ways make it worse for them.
Yeah.
Because we're used to it. Mm-hmm. Okay, we've got the routine down. I mean, how many times have we been faced with a potential hurricane or actually faced with it? A lot. That's exactly right. You get up the East Coast and many other places, as a matter of fact, they're not used to it like we are. No. Okay, they don't know the routine. They don't know what to do. A hurricane's coming our way. We've been through it so many times, good and bad. We kind of have a mindset on how to handle it.
And because of that mindset, we're sending all kinds of help their way. All kind of agencies led by the fire marshal, by the state fire marshal's department is heading out there, helping people, sending resources, helping them prepare not only for the preparation but also for the expected cleanup and recovery efforts as well. So Louisiana's showing we're showing some love to our neighbors up to the northeast of us.
Getting up there and saying, "Okay, guys, just follow our lead. Let us tell you how to do this." All right. Mm-hmm. First thing you need is a crawfish pot. Okay, you got to get some crawfish cooking. Anyway, all right. So listen, we're going to talk a little bit about these school walkouts in Sacramento. Actually, Sacramento High School. The students have revolted. Mm-hmm. Hundreds of students have walked out, and they are planning more walkouts simply because they came back and they found out that many of the teachers and faculty that were there the previous year had been laid off. And don't work there anymore. And they believe that the racial makeup of the administration now doesn't properly represent the school. And in fact, I'll give a quote right here from one of them. We barely have any teachers of color this year. Over the summer, they had fired or let go a majority of them. This is from a very experienced in life 16-year-old who talks about the staff that have been let go. And they are now protesting, and they are claiming that that is their school. In fact, their chants are, "This is our school." And so they are taking a stand and saying that they will not back down until administration takes them seriously and negotiates some type of retribution or correction. In addition to that, this is the one that really sticks to me, okay? Mm-hmm. In addition to that, they are protesting new dress code regulations because, and I'm not joking about this, they have to wear pants. Yeah. Okay, they have to wear pants.
They're crying in California about it being 100-degree weather and having to wear pants. When you got kids here in Louisiana, now we got real heat because we have humidity coming with it.
It's beautiful.
It's beautiful. I mean, it's beautiful. In Carroll Crow it is too, but I'm sorry, in California.
It's beautiful in California. Yes. Are you kidding me? Even if it is 100 degrees, you got no humidity, and the air. They have wind there. Yes. Okay, they have breeze there, Brandon. Yeah. And so this is what we're going to be discussing. And, of course, we invite your phone calls and your opinions and comments at 232-1542. But I'll tell you, this is a perfect example and illustration of what we have created in society. Okay, and these are now high school students that now want to control who works there. Mm-hmm. They want to control the dress code, and they are making no bones about identifying the school as their own. This is our school, and I think that I'm not surprised. This is just what we've created. And they say, another one in the chant, they say, and I quote, "You can't stop the revolution." Yeah.
I wonder where they're getting that from. Maybe is it from their adults that they're watching on TV doing these protests that may be adults in age but not really in maturity?
Yes, exactly. And other complaints is that they are not allowed to stay on campus after the school lets out. After school, the administration locks the doors. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, I don't know about where you went to school. Yeah. But I know that where I went to high school and where I went to junior high school, with the exception of the gym, and the only reason the exception was in the gym is because you had athletics using the gym area after school hours. That included the dance team, cheerleaders, all those people that would stay after school for any type of after school participation that they're involved in. Yeah. They all had to go straight to the gym immediately. Mm-hmm. Okay, then all the other hallways were locked. Mm-hmm. Okay, and you knew that once those doors closed behind you after the last bell rang, you couldn't go back in. So I know that was the standard where I went to school. Yeah, after school, you can't go back in.
And why do schools do this? To protect the school itself from potential vandalism and to protect fellow students from being in unsupervised situations on the school campus where they could get hurt. Students, when they are left alone, oftentimes in a situation after hours, oftentimes they'll do some stupid things because they're not that mature.
No, they're
mischievous. Very young. Yes, they're mischievous a lot of times.
And it would prevent some student wanting to be an entrepreneur later in life for going into the school and stealing blank report cards and selling them to their friends.
Yes.
I'll say no more. Okay.
But you see, this is why every time I hear some of these adults and teachers that try to tell students, let your voice be heard. Look, I think it's with good intentions that they say that, but then when you have students that are letting their voices be heard by saying you can't stop the revolution and saying this is our school, that's the kind of stuff that we see, and we talk about it on this show often in these universities, but even now in these high schools, and wait till it gets into the middle school level as well, where these adults are giving these kids more and more power and more say in what goes on. When we were in school, the adults had the say. And you know what? We were the better for it because we had structure.
Yes.
We knew what to expect. And unless the adults are doing something wrong, such as an abuse of power when it comes to actual physical, sexual, other areas of abuse, if the adults are actually keeping order within a school, that's a good thing. Okay? What's happening right now is all that's happening is they are encouraging students to basically, like I said, let their voices be heard, but cause disruptions whenever they aren't happy about something.
Full day walkouts. In fact, one of the representatives from the school says that she's proud of these students for standing up what they believe in. And she says, and I quote, "This is what we taught them. This is what we wanted them to have, self-worth." So there you go. They're even admitting it. They're not even denying the fact that this is what they want the students to do. This is how they have taught them to behave. And now I believe that they're likely going to change a lot of the administration changes that they did and the dress code. They're going to negotiate with these students.
They're going to cave.
They're going to cave. They're going to let these kids dictate what to do. And then what's going to happen? The next time they have any kind of rules or regulations that the students don't like, or they fire a teacher that the students like, then the students are going to protest. This is just one of those bad situations, and we keep fueling the fire. And I would ask these same school administration representatives that are supportive of this, I would ask them this. What if those students wanted to stage a walkout in support of pro-life? Okay? Would you still be supportive?
That's a good question.
Okay, let's say you got a lot of students that get together and they're anti-abortion, they're pro-life, and they want to stage a walkout. Okay, in representation of their cause. Are you still going to be supportive of them?
When are the adults going to be the adults? And that's what bothers me, because this whole effort of letting their voices be heard, letting their feelings come out, and all that crap that goes along with that way of thinking, it's putting these students on the same level as adults. And I'm sorry, students and children are not on the same level as adults.
Yeah, well, they are here.
They are here.
Okay, I mean,
that's when you got chaos.
They shouldn't be. Yeah, they shouldn't be, because I'll tell you, the next step, and it's going to happen, is they're not going to like the grading system.
Yeah.
Okay? We don't like the fact that some people fail. Okay? Everybody needs to pass. If you show up for class and you make an effort, you should be passing our fellow students. And that's what's going to happen next. Phone lines lighten up, boy.
232-1542. All right, caller, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Gentlemen.
Yes, sir.
Hey, good afternoon.
You're a little bit behind on your reporting on this one. There's 3 points of the story that have been debunked and changed due to the national media reported it one way. There's a local station, the Fox affiliate there locally, reran the story, and it's running on YouTube right now, where some of the things that were said were not true. And here's some of the updates for you.
Wait, what was said that was not true? Because we'll actually play some audio of the students actually chanting that in a little bit.
No, clarify. Yeah,
clarify.
I mean, we appreciate you updating us. So tell us what is it that has been updated?
This is the school in Sacramento, correctly?
Yeah.
Correct?
Yes.
This is a charter school privately funded by the church.
Okay.
There is no public school board. There is no way for these kids to do that.
We didn't say it was public.
Hold on.
We didn't even talk about the fact that it was public or private.
Wait, hold on.
All right.
A lot of people are reporting that it's a public school. It's not.
Okay, fair enough. I'm sure that you're right that some people are reporting it as being a public school. Brandon and I did not report it that way.
I understand, but I just want to make sure people understand that when we say things like they're going to fight this and they're going to go against this and the teachers are letting them do that, the teachers that are supporting these kids are teachers who were fired over the summer.
Yes, as a matter of fact, the lady that we talked about, she was fired because they did some consolidation of positions, and she wasn't brought back. And so she is one of them that's encouraging the students to continue on.
Yes, let me ask you this, caller, because obviously you're well informed with this story. Even though this is a private or charter school, are you still? What's your opinion on whether or not the students should be doing this?
Absolutely. I think they need to go to school. They need to go to class.
There you go.
I've got 3 kids in school right now, and here's the biggest problem. If I'm going to spend the money to send my kids to private school, and this is a voluntary thing. This isn't like these kids are having to go to Comeaux because they live on Verot School Road, and this is where they're zoned for, and they have to go there.
Sure.
These kids decided to go there. No one's making them go.
Yeah.
And also
well, their parents should be making them go to school.
Well,
that's the thing about it as well.
Well, I think he means the family, the parent. But go on, sir.
The organization that runs the school's funding and is the administration for the school did do a press release today. And they did say the reason why the students are removed from the campus after school is over is because the bonding for their insurance ends 30 minutes after the school closes.
Yeah.
So there's a liability shield involved.
Absolutely.
Too. They don't have open. They are not a public property.
Yeah.
So
no, I got you. But we did a similar story. Yeah. We did a similar story about a school in New Orleans where there's a lawsuit and there's a big problem there and it's a private school. It's a Catholic school. And the whole issue is because the girl they think that it's racially profiling because of the hairstyle that she was wearing.
Yeah, the lawsuit's been dropped by the family, by the way. That happened today.
Did it happen?
Yeah, it came
I
out
wonder
today.
if they settled.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, there you go. That is the assumption that there was that they settled.
Okay, so they settled.
Hot flash stories. And you have these hot flash stories where you see these victims of these administrations and government and the authorities against their needs. Give it about 3 days. And when the truth comes out, everybody goes, oh, well, they need to go to class.
Yeah. That's the whole idea of going to school, right?
This nonsense doesn't work anywhere but in California anyway, so I really wouldn't worry about it too much.
Yeah, the only thing good out there is the weather.
All right.
Try this stuff in Texas. All right, we'll see you guys
good
later.
luck there. Thanks for the call, man.
All right, thank you for the call. All right, we're going to go ahead and take this quick commercial break. When we come back, more of your thoughts here on Offside. And welcome back in. Brandon Comeaux, Shannon Wilkerson here with you. 232-1542, talking about a situation happening in Sacramento High School where students are holding a walkout in protest of some recent changes at the school. Some of those changes being what we talked about at the end of the last segment, where the buildings to the school are locked up after school has let out. Also talking about the fact that these students say that the dress code is unacceptable because they have to wear pants with the weather being 100 degrees. Boo-hoo. And then also the other thing as well is they're upset because, and they said it, teachers, there are not enough teachers of color that are there to reflect the student body.
Yeah,
which to me, I'm sorry, that could sound very racist to some people.
Well, they are claiming racism on behalf of the school.
I know.
Okay, because they're saying the majority, if they claim, and I don't know the statistics, okay? So if any of the listeners out there know, I'm sure that we'll get a call about it. But nevertheless, I don't know what the exact numbers are, but the students are claiming that the black and Hispanic population within the school is the majority, or the two of them together.
Yeah.
All right. And so, but I don't know that each one of them individually is, but they're claiming that those two groups put together of the people of color as they identify themselves are the majority. And so they are making the argument that therefore the teachers in the administration should more accurately represent the population of the students in regards to the racial format, the racial makeup, if you will, of the administration. So I guess if they're thinking that 2/3 of the population of the students are either black and Hispanic, therefore 2/3 of the teachers in the administration should be black or Hispanic. I don't see it that way at all. I think that you need to give the job to the person that does the best work. Okay, I mean, we've been through this I don't know how many times when it comes to race, how it applies, or gender, how it applies. You got to forget all that if you want to get progress. You got to hire the people that do the best work.
And it's easy for these students to sit there and say that, but they're not in on the hiring process. It's easy for them to assume that racism was the reason why some of these teachers are cut. Listening to that teacher, we'll play some audio later, the one that's encouraging them to do what they're doing. Mm-hmm. You know what? I don't think I want that in my classroom.
It sounds like they made a good choice by getting rid of her.
All right, 232-1542. Caller, you're up. Go ahead.
Okay, so
here we go.
As a teacher, if they want to walk out, let them walk out, because I tell you what, I can get a whole lot of stuff done without them being in the classroom or cutting up or whatever they want to do. But the thing is, these are children, and it's not for them to make these decisions. And I don't know exactly how the California charter schools work, but I know in Louisiana, the charter schools do still get funding from the state, because when a student leaves, say, for instance, Lafayette Parish, if they leave a Lafayette Parish school and they go to a charter school in Lafayette Parish, that money follows the student.
Yes.
So it may not be, and I could be wrong, but when I went to the meeting, that's how I was explained, that's how I understood it. So they also have a board for the charter schools, and that board makes the decisions, and the teachers, they do have their pay is directly affected. If I'm not mistaken, there were some teachers in charter schools that, based on their good performance, they actually got bonuses.
Mm-hmm.
So
sounds like a good plan.
Exactly. So, but the good thing about a charter school is that you don't have the same issues with like tenure and things like that like you do with public schools, because if you're not performing, all they have to do is say, look at your scores, you're not performing, you're not up to par, and then they remove you, which is good because it means that you're on your toes. Mm-hmm. But these students also have to abide by the rules. If the students aren't doing what they're supposed to do, well, guess what? You're out. You go back to the public school.
Listen, it's simple, all right? If you cut school, there should be consequences. That's skipping out. That's what we called it when I was growing up. Or if you refuse to go to school, that's skipping out. That's cutting school. That's grounds for maybe expulsion and definitely suspension. And if you do it again, another suspension until you're expelled. Also, if you don't come to class, guess what? You don't get the grade.
Well, and then the other thing is when you were talking about the liability, I played sports. I was there after school, but when something happens, the first thing the parents are going to do if somebody gets in a fight or they get hurt or they get assaulted or whatever, the first thing the parents are going to want to do is they want to go after the school. Well, why weren't you there? Well, we closed the campus. Your kids are supposed to leave. Why aren't you watching your kids? Why do your kids need to stay at school past their hours? Because as teachers, we have families too, and if you want to keep the school open all hours of the night, well, guess who's going to have to stay? They're going to make the teachers stay and do duty.
Yep.
No, school's over. Go home. Why do you want to stay at school all day?
Yeah, yeah. It leads nothing to trouble. Okay, if you're hanging out in the hall room, in the hallways, or in the classrooms after school, that's just nothing but trouble. Young people are gonna. I'm not saying that all young people are gonna do bad things, but mostly boys, I would say. All right, you got young boys all hanging around after school, nothing to do but waste time, and you put them back in the classroom unsupervised. Things are going to happen.
Think about the fact that these students are fight to stay after school, after hours, and they're doing it by cutting class when school is actually open.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. You don't want to go to school when we're open, but you want to stay in school after it's closed.
Exactly.
Well, this is my last point. They said they wanted to start a revolution. Well, I'll tell you what. You go ahead and you start your little revolution, and you look and see what you're up against, because you're going to be up against people who were educated, who did go to class, because our generation, we were educated. So you go ahead and start your revolution and see how far that gets you.
Yeah, good point. Thanks for the call. All right.
232-1542. All right, caller, you're up. Go ahead.
He's ready, boy.
Yeah, speaking of revolution, those kids, they need to be whipped real damn hard. And the second thing that needs to happen is they need to take them all on a field trip out there to San Francisco, where every Whirlpool refrigerator box is a single-family dwelling.
That's good,
too. They don't know what the hell they're talking about. That place is so entitled, it's pitiful. It has the most money and the most poverty as well.
I tell you what, you mentioned field trip. Yeah, I tell you, you mentioned field trip, and I've always had the opinion that students that are troublesome, always getting into trouble, maybe not serious trouble, but definitely, kids that are having trouble finding their way, following the rules, right? Because not all of them are bad. I really believe that they should have regular field trips for those students alone to a prison. Okay? You want to have an effective field trip, gather all the troublemakers together, and you bring them to a prison, and they sit down and talk with real hardened criminals that are doing life.
Well, remember the show Scared Straight?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm thinking of. Okay, but you make that a mandatory field trip for these kids, and you may have some better results than bringing them to the bread factory. Which was great, by the way. That was a great field trip. We went to Bunny Bread. It was great. Thanks for the call, brother.
Thank you, caller. All right, 232-1542. You're up next, caller. Go ahead.
Hey, how's it going? This is Paul.
Hey, Paul.
Hey, Paul.
I love this argument that they make. Their idea of a 6 for something that they simply view as racist, is an actual racist policy.
Yes.
Yes, that's exactly right. They're exercising racism to try to fight racism.
Yeah, and the idea of affirmative action is the same exact thing. They talk about institutional racism. Well, government is an institution, and if you have a policy that specifically goes after or hinders one race or benefits another, that is by definition racist, so then you have actual institutional racism. It's really kind of funny, just if you think about it, and painful.
It is funny and painful. Those are perfect descriptions.
Thank you, caller.
Exercising racism to fight racism. We'll be right back here on Offsides. Keep your phone calls coming in, 232-1542, the Cajun Harley Hotline. Welcome back to Offsides, everybody. Shannon, as the recording just said, Shannon Wilkerson, Brandon Comeaux. We're talking about this Sacramento high school where the students have staged a walkout in protest of some teachers being released. They didn't like that, and they also don't like the new dress code, and they are planning these protests. They're walking out, refusing to go to class until they get their way.
Yes, as a matter of fact, Fox 40 News did reporting in the area. We wanted to play this real quickly for you because we want you to hear how the students are protesting, what they're saying, and what the ex-teacher at the school is saying as well. So here we go.
Fox 40 and your NorCal Honda dealers invite you to
of course, it's going to play an ad. So it's got about 10 seconds. I sit here and cue it up during the commercial break, and it just decides to restart whatever it wanted to restart.
The ghost of the machine.
Here we go. 3, 2, 1. Here's the report.
Between 100 and 200 Sacramento High students refuse to go to class today, costing the school state money for every period they miss.
We have been fighting for years for them to listen and support us as Black and Latino kids. That is the majority of our population.
Senior Kira Young says students are furious. They came back from summer break to find many teachers and support staff have been let go.
We barely have any teachers of color this year. Over the summer, they had fired and let go majority of them.
My position was eliminated.
Wanda Stark says after 16 years working at Sac High as a staff member, her job was cut a week after school let out for the summer.
They told us to reapply for the positions that they had supposedly consolidated, and when we did, we were off-boarded.
But Young says there were also other changes. Students are now not allowed to stay on campus once school lets out for the day.
They lock all the doors before we even out of school, so nobody can go back inside, so we don't get help from our teachers. And you're pushed outside of these gates into the streets, so many people can't get picked up till a lot later.
Young says the school's uniform dress code is just unacceptable.
We have to wear pants, and it's 100-degree weather.
Fox 40 attempted to reach school administrators. However, calls and messages sent to St. Hope's, the nonprofit which runs the charter school, were not returned. Meanwhile, Stark says she's proud these students are standing up for what they believe in.
This is what we taught them. This is what we wanted them to have, self-worth.
In Oak Park in South Sacramento.
Okay, they should all be suspended immediately.
Yep, exactly.
Okay, that's it. They should all be suspended immediately, kicked out of school, go back to public school or find another private school to go to. they should all be suspended immediately.
And that teacher there for making that comment, this is what we're teaching them, to be disobedient and rowdy with their little stupid hashtag shirts saying hashtag schools not prisons. This is ridiculous. 232-1542. Caller, you're up. Go ahead.
Yeah, man. Good topic, guys. I call in and talk to you guys often. Man, there's so many things wrong with it, huh? The racism aspect really stands out to me a bunch. Because in the charter schools, like, all right, my kids go to charter school. They did go to public school, because the charter school wasn't there. But when it became available and the grades were available for my 3 daughters, they all 3 now go to the charter school. And to be honest with you, it's 1,000 times better than the public school. And it has nothing to do with any race or anything. Now, I do notice a lot of teachers are hired and fired. And I think the reason being is because if they don't produce, they're fired. Like, it's not a tenure situation like with regular public schools. If they don't if they don't make the grade, they're done.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, at least they're held accountable at these charter schools. The teachers are more held accountable than they are. I mean, they're not held accountable hardly at all in public schools, but at least it seems like they're held more accountable at these schools. The problem is that now they're not holding the students accountable.
Yeah, not at all. The way I was explained before, when I was looking into the charter schools and stuff, one of the administrators there explained to me the way the charter school system works is, in Louisiana anyway, they say it's going to cost $3,200 to $5,800 to teach one kid in 3rd grade. Okay, say your kid's a 3rd grader. Well, the charter school, they cut a deal with the school, with the state, and says, all right, instead of being $3,800 to $5,800, we'll just take the $3,800. So that's how they get their money. They take the least amount possible that the state will give them to teach a child. But they don't have all the bureaucracy, and they don't lose money like the public school system does.
Well, I'll tell you what, this school is losing money as these students are protesting right now. For every day these students are out picketing out there, they're losing money.
They have to make up for the school time. Watch. They're going to have to.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, I don't even know why. I'm glad that we're having this conversation, identifying this problem out there. All right, but I can't even believe we're having this conversation. Why are we even discussing this? These kids need to be suspended immediately. They have no business trying to make judgment over the decisions that were made by the administration. They need to report to class immediately, or they should all be suspended and failed.
I just think, thank you so much, caller. I just think years ago we wouldn't have dreamed of having this conversation anywhere within the United States. So anytime we talk about a story like this, and yes, this is happening in California, but look, California is not the only area where things are going wrong in this country. Heck, there are places even next door in Texas where I could see this happening at. Shannon and I both think this could happen in Austin. It
could happen. That's exactly right. I don't think that it could happen in Acadiana, but I think it could happen in New Orleans.
Yeah.
I don't think it could happen in Dallas or Houston, but I think it could happen in Austin.
Absolutely.
So there are liberal cities that are developing in many states across the country, and this type of behavior would not be out of line for it to happen in any of those places.
232-1542, heading back to the Cajun Harley hotline. Caller, you're up. Go ahead.
One time in Iberia, they had a protest with the kids. That was back by the 80s, early 80s.
Okay, you still there? I think we lost them. Let's try something. All right, Sarah, Ted, whatever your name is today, are you there?
All right, try back. Try back, Sarah.
I'll never forget that, by the way.
Hilarious.
Oh, man. 232-1542. All right, caller. Go ahead. You're on the air.
What these kids are being taught that there's no consequences for misbehaving.
Yes, sir. You're right about that.
Yeah, that's right.
When does it come to an end? They're going to grow up thinking, well, if I don't like something, then I'm going to have it. I'm going to get it my way, and here we go again with no coping skills and no consequences for your behavior.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right on, caller.
Yeah. I mean, think about when these kids are entering into the workplace. First off, they're going to follow the same behavior pattern into college.
Yeah.
All right. and they're going to be building up student debt while they're in college, and they're going to be protesting a bunch of crap that they don't agree with, that is going to be nothing but a distraction from their education and from everybody else's education. And then they're going to get a degree, and then they're going to find a job, maybe. And then when they find a job, they're going to expect the same treatment. Not going to happen.
Well, Shannon, you pointed it out before that protesting has become the new in thing to do because they see it on TV modeled by, I'm not going to call them adults, but people that are older than them. And so they see that it's a way that's to get things done if you pitch a fit. And that's pretty much what they're doing right now is they're pitching a fit. And their demands are absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, it is.
All right, 232-1542 caller, you're up. Go ahead.
Hey, guys.
Hey.
The simple thing that we're all missing on this one is they should bring all of the kids into the school and they should sit them down. They should give them a piece of paper. It says, do you want to attend this school the way it is currently run with the current set of rules? And if they say they do not, all they've got to do is check the box no, because a charter school is a school of choice. If you don't like the school, you have the right to leave. If you're going to a public school and you want to go to a charter school, you have to apply to the charter school, just like you have to apply to a private school. So if they don't like it, they have the right to leave and go back to their public school.
Yeah, and there are people waiting in line to get into these charter schools.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
It's not easy to get in there. They normally have a lottery, and it's difficult. Very few people actually get in compared to how many people want to get in. So I don't know why they're even considering tolerating this behavior. They got all these other students that would be dying to go there, and they're not going to pass judgment on who's being hired as teachers, and they'll be happy to wear pants.
Right. So it's a one-question survey. Do you want to come to school with the current set of rules, yes or no? And if the answer is no, then fine. That's a resignation. You can go someplace else.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you, caller. All right, 232-1542. You're up next, caller. Go ahead.
Yes, is it? You have me online, is that right?
You are on the air.
Okay, good. Listen, I listen to you guys a lot, but I have major differences with a lot of things you say. And today is one of those days.
Okay.
Because you talk about it today is that people are learning to protest, and it's all part of the common culture. I'm quite a bit older than you guys, and I can tell you that I grew up, and I was in the New Orleans area like you guys. Like, is it Shannon, correct? Are you in New Orleans, from New Orleans?
Yes, sir.
Anyway, I grew up and I went to public school in New Orleans, and I'm telling you, in the late 60s, there was protest in the schools about simple things. I went to East Jefferson High School, and there was protest. And so it's nothing new. And if you guys would look at the history with regard to just the 60s, the tumultuous time of the 60s was a tremendous time of protest.
Well, if you don't mind me asking, what year did you graduate at East Jeff?
1970.
Okay, well, all right, you're right, because I don't know the history of the high school protests in the 60s. I know that there were a lot of protests, high school campuses, college campuses especially, during the 60s regarding mostly racial discrimination and Vietnam.
Vietnam, yeah, that's correct.
But I'll tell you, I graduated in 1984 from Grace King High School, not far from where you graduated from. And there was I never had experienced any protest where you walked out of the school. That was just two different generations, though.
I'm sure. That's for sure. And there's no question that a lot of these kids are making big mistakes, and the schools are letting them usurp their authority. But there are times when things like that need to happen, and schools don't need to overreact. But with what your previous caller had a very good point that the actual charter schools, I mean, it is you're allowed to go there only because you apply and you get in there. And you guys I actually work with public schools, and I'm telling you, you guys really down the public schools quite a bit, and I don't think you have a clue about what public schools have to deal with, because they don't have the ability just to send people home. They have to serve everybody that comes there. So there's a lot of things like that. I don't want to take up any more time.
I will tell you respectfully, sir, I've got a pretty good grasp on what the public school system has to deal with, because my mother was actually on the school board in Jefferson Parish. And East Jefferson High School is one of the places that she did a lot of work. And I heard a lot of feedback from her and frustration about what they have to deal with as administration, as teachers, and as a school board. But you bring up some really excellent points. And as always, we always appreciate you listening and calling in.
All right, we now go to the special hotline. Wondering, I think Shannon knows who this is, but I don't know who it is yet. All right, caller, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Yes, I'd like to give you some background of exactly what a charter school is. In Louisiana, in order to create a charter school, a group of people get together with advisors and necessary help and lawyers and draw up the charter. That is how the school will run. So for everything about how this school is going to operate, or everything that they know at that time, the charter must then go to the school board of the parish in which the charter is going to be established. The school board must then either reject or accept the charter. Once that happens, the charter goes to the state. The state then has to approve the charter. And with that, the establishment begins of the charter school. Now, what a charter school is a public school, which is financially supported by the Louisiana State Department of Education. You might say, well, that takes care of it. That explains it all. It does not. Remember the charter that was drawn up to begin with. That the school is operated, run, and conducted by their board. There is an advisory board attached to the charter school, the principal, the staff, the teachers, and the parents. And also, a child must be tested in order to be accepted into the charter school. Charter schools do not just accept anyone. There are certain requirements. Some are academic, some are more personal, but the parents must also be involved. Now, what does that mean in everyday life? What it means is that if that charter school decides they're going to have classes 6 days a week, then that's what they're going to have. Or that they're going to go to school from 9 to 5. That's what they're going to do. And these schools perform far and away ahead of just any public school in any area of any parish in Louisiana.
And let me ask you a quick question. Do they determine their own form of discipline? Do they come up, like in situations like this, do they have to answer to anybody about how they do and do not respond to these students?
Rules and regulations. They may say, well, girls can't wear, I don't know what the rules are, but yes, they have their own rules, and they must be followed. And they also have the authority to dismiss a child from the school. But remember what I told you, who runs that school and how it gets to that position. And it is all, the lines are waiting out on the street for registration to try to be admitted to those schools, because they are run like a business, and just as I have described. So these little children in California, well, California is really a separate country. I don't know why we even acknowledge California. Those people are crazy.
Well, thank you so much. We were very overdue for a break. We really appreciate
good
all the
info
wisdom and knowledge. Yes.
Yep, thank
you so much. All right. Well, we do have to take this quick commercial break, come back for a couple minutes. Time for a couple of calls as well. We'll be right back.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Shannon Wilkerson, Brandon Comeaux, talking about all these snot-nosed students out in California. They're walking out because they just don't like the things that are going on at their charter school, of all places. I think that the school needs to suspend all of these students immediately, kick them out, and get some of these other kids that are trying to get into the school and give them the opportunity to get the better education.
I agree. All right, to the phone lines we go. Caller, you're up. Go ahead.
Hey, Brandon and Shannon, it's me.
Hey, where you at?
Oh, how's it going, guys? I'm still working, man. Still out here working.
What's up, Craig?
Took a little union break, man.
Yeah.
I agree with y'all. Listen, you know, like I said, a lot of all what we hear and all of this is nonsense and insanity. You know what I'm saying? Look, get rid of all the kids that want to protest. Not a problem. You're out. Guess what? Now we got a position for somebody who wants to learn. And, you know, I was listening earlier, and I believe it was Shannon was talking about, you know, going on the field trips. I used to be the parent that would go on the field trips with the teachers and stuff. Now, it helped that one of my kids' teachers was a Golden Blues dancer, right?
Yeah.
So, like, we would go to the zoo. And what I would do was she would give me the kids that were harder to handle.
Uh-huh.
And, you know, listen, you can motivate kids, but you got to do it when they're young, because when they get old, they blow up on you, right?
Yeah.
And what I used to do with the kids is, when we separated, and the kids that were coming with me, they would come with me, and I'd tell them, okay, guys, listen, we're going to have fun at the zoo today. Now, this is the deal. Y'all all got a little bag lunch you brought with you, right? And they go, yeah. And I said, everybody who behaves and doesn't climb in the gorilla cage and doesn't ride the elephant, right?
Yeah.
And throw stuff at the tiger, right? Everyone that behaves themselves, I'm going to treat y'all all at McDonald's. The ones that don't behave, you'll eat your bag lunch, and you can watch us have burgers.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, there you go. Go ahead. Sorry.
So there's always a way to motivate them. You know what I'm saying? To try to get them to do the right thing. But the lady that was talking about the way a charter school comes together and stuff, one of the words that she said in there was the parents are demanded that the parents be involved. And that's what we're having problems with. Come on. Why do you think these kids act like this? Because the parents act like this.
Oh, absolutely. I tell you what, I saw a video. Let me interrupt you, and I'll comment on that real quick. I saw a video recently of one of these Antifa protesters, you know, the people with the masks and everything. And it was a teenage boy, looks like he was high school age, and his mother shows up over there.
Oh yeah, that was awesome.
At the protest, she knows he's there, and he's supposed to be in school, and she grabs him from the crowd, and she's pulling him from the crowd, slapping him hard several times over and over. And although I'm not condoning violence, all right, but it was quite satisfying to see that there was a parent somewhere that was going to say, you're supposed to be in school. You got no business out here protesting. But you're right. Where are the parents in this? Yeah. You know, it's in California. They're all high.
Right. Well, I mean, come on. You know, I mean, throughout the country, who gives a crap anymore? You know what I'm saying? These are the times when anything and everything goes. And it's like, no. And everybody wonders why, you know, they're killing each other like stomping on roaches in Chicago. There's no value to anything anymore.
Yeah, thank you, Craig.
That's right. Thank you very much.
All right, we got to leave it there. That's a great way to end the show, though. All right, so we will have a break at 5 coming up at national news, weather, and traffic. And then got a brand new discussion lined up in the 5. We'll be right back.
Welcome to Offsides. I'm Shannon Wilkerson here with Brandon Comeaux. Thank you for joining us for today's broadcast. We'll be with you until 6 o'clock. It is currently 5:08. And as always, we appreciate you tuning in. And today is a somber day for the obvious reasons. It's September 11th, 9/11. And so we are going to be discussing 9/11 in many different ways throughout the hour. And I thought that it might be good way to start for us to share our own story of that day when it first happened. Yeah. Okay, because it's one of those things everybody remembers. Okay, where were you when? What was going on? And of course, as like everyone else, I remember it quite vividly. And I was working late at that time. I was working a lot of late nights. And so I would sleep late. Yeah. And I would sleep until, late morning, or so, close to lunchtime every day. And this was when everybody still had landlines. All right. And I had a landline, and I had, and along with landlines, everybody had answering machines, actual machines you had to plug into the phone line. And as you may recall, those answering machines, unless you turn the volume down, you could hear somebody giving you the message. Yeah. Okay. There was a speaker there. And so the phone was ringing, and then someone was hanging up. And I remember hearing it. I was barely awake. And then I heard someone leaving me a message. and it was my mom.
Yeah.
And she was just saying, wake up, yelling into the phone, wake up and turn the television on.
Yeah.
I can hear it just like it was yesterday. Turn the television on. And I rolled over and I just grabbed the remote control and I turned the TV on. And I remember seeing, this building and all the smoke.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking, what in the world is that? And then I saw the caption underneath because the volume wasn't up yet. So I turned the volume up. And of course, I'm watching. This is after the first building had been struck.
Mm-hmm.
And then I picked up the phone. I'm talking to Mom, what's going on? And we were both on the phone speaking to one another when the second plane hit live on television.
Yeah.
Okay. I remember watching that and saying, oh my God, somebody hit the other plane. And that's when you knew it wasn't an accident. Because at first, you thought maybe it was an accident because that type of an accident had happened before in New York.
Yeah.
Somebody had accidentally crashed a plane into the Empire State Building. Now you're going back decades, but nevertheless, you're thinking, wow, what happened here? Was this an accident? Was it intentional? But of course, then you learn that it was certainly intentional when the other plane struck. And of course, that's when it all just hit the fan. And as you're watching it throughout the day, as I watched it throughout the day, I remember specifically when the first building went down. And then right after that, the next building went down. And it was really one of those times where, of course, I remember you were maybe too young or definitely too young, maybe not even born. Of course, I remember when the space shuttle, exploded.
In the mid-'80s?
In the mid-'80s, that's right. And, but this really was much more significant in a lot of ways. And as the hour unfolds, of course, we'll talk about later in the day and that evening and then the days after and so on. And so tell me about what you recall about when you first saw it, when you first learned about what was going on.
Well, I remember I was homeschooling at the time. I was a sophomore, and I'd done a couple of classes that morning by way of video. That's how we did had the classes on video. And so decided to take a little bit of break about that time, put the TV on and, have a little something to eat before I went on to my next class. And I turned the TV on as I'm flipping through, and all of a sudden I see the news and I see the graphic of the plane crashing into the tower. And I couldn't believe the first one. Okay. Couldn't believe what I was seeing. And then all of a sudden the report came in where the second plane was coming in. And some of the things you just said kind of went through my mind a little bit as well. And just as the day went along, just feeling in shock as someone that studied history and someone that was very aware of America's place in it, couldn't help but think about Pearl Harbor and the comparisons I felt between this and Pearl Harbor, like we had been attacked in a similar way, except the enemy was a whole lot different. And another thing I thought about was I had just started my first job just a few months ago, and one instrument that we used was box cutters. And thinking about the fact that these evil terrorists were using the same kind of thing that I used to open up boxes at a grocery store. To be able to
something
open
you used on a daily basis. Kept in your pocket.
Yeah, and they were using this to take over airplanes and cause one of the most destructive days in American history.
Yeah, it's really incredible in the worst way, if you will. And so, anyway, that was just an alarming morning. Obviously, one of the worst mornings that I ever remember in my lifetime. And anyway, so as the day continued to unfold, I didn't leave the house. I remember calling work, and at that point, I was a business owner here in Lafayette, and I was getting phone calls from managers about what do we do, because lots of the businesses around town were closing down. Yeah. And so I gave them instructions, yes, go ahead and close down, everybody go home. But then there was the Pentagon crash. Right. All right. And then the other plane went down that was overtaken by the passengers, but we didn't know that. Yeah. Okay. We didn't know the whole story at the time. But the point is that 2 more planes went down, and I remember thinking that we were going to be that the attacks, either by plane or through other methods, were going to continue throughout the day. Yeah. I remember thinking that. I was like, okay, what's going to be next? All right, because now they've hit They've hit the World Trade Center. They hit the Pentagon. Well, of course, I thought that they were going to be attacking the White House, which turns out was one of the targets. I thought that Disney World was going to. I remember thinking in my mind, okay, what else are they going to hit? All right, are we going to start seeing nuclear attacks? Are we going to, is this an invasion? All that stuff really starts running through your mind. Who is this? You know, I mean, it was obvious that it was terrorists, but what is the identity specifically? And are they partnering with an established country? Of course you're thinking, of course I grew up in the 80s, so right away I'm thinking Russia, Cuba, those guys, the communists are coming, because that's how I was raised. And so that was another thing. It was like, okay, man, this is going to continue throughout the day. Right. And I think that if it weren't for certain outcomes, we may have in fact seen, they may have had other attacks planned throughout the day that were canceled because of our responses.
Well, had it not been for the bravery of the people where the plane landed in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, which is where President Trump was today, that plane was headed towards the U.S. Capitol. Right. And so that would have been it would have been a huge mess as well. But you were talking about it earlier, and you're just talking about how things have, thinking about that it was Russia. That's one of the things, the mindset, if anything changed the mindset of how we looked at the world, it was that. Because the mindset for some, like you mentioned, was Russia. We went completely from thinking about Russia to thinking about the Middle East. And all of a sudden, everything that happened in the Middle East, we were fascinated by. Whether it was the fact that we were warring in Afghanistan, or whether it was the fact that just keeping an eye on everything that's going out there. This was no longer a situation where they had their problems. All of a sudden, the problems of the Middle East, the violence that happened there was brought to our shores. And as Americans, we're not used to being attacked. We're used to everything happening on the foreign stage.
That's right. And with the exception of Pearl Harbor, like you said, we've been lucky. Yes. Okay. Now, I say lucky. We've been able to avoid it. Maybe we were able to avoid it because of our military. Okay, so maybe luck didn't have anything to do with it. Nevertheless,
and location,
as citizens,
too.
And location, that's right. But nevertheless, as citizens, this was the first time that we had to deal with something like that since Pearl Harbor.
Yeah, the 232-1542 going to the Cajun Harley hotline as we remember 9/11. Caller, you're on the air. Go ahead.
I've been in the aviation business a long time, and this attack hit home. And I remember with the second attack, that just like everybody else, he knew we were at war. And I can tell you one of the unsung, I agree with you, Shannon. I think this was going to go on all day. I think they had sleeper cells ready to go. I think there were probably people on airplanes. And the smartest thing that the Bush administration did was immediately ground every airplane in the country except for military aircraft.
Yeah.
We had to ground helicopters all over the Gulf. We had some of them in cane fields. We had airplanes land at my airport that could not leave for the better part of 2 weeks. And I think, I'm not sure of who ultimately made the decision to park all the civilian airplanes, but I do believe that was going to go on all day.
Yeah.
And it's funny you thought about Disney World. My first thought about if it continues was going to be Las Vegas because of the hedonism, and it was when it became apparent it was Muslim and Islamic. That would be a logical target. So
just because of the sinful identity of it.
And I tell you, those of us in the aviation business to this day, those of us who were in this business back then, still carry a scar because all of us got into this business because we love it.
Yeah.
And to have what we do for a living used as a weapon against our own people really hurt a lot of us.
Yeah, that's scary.
And can I say this, caller, kind of going back to the mindset I had back then while we have you on, is as opposed to, and you said it perfectly, it was something we use every day that was used as a weapon against us. As opposed to in history, whenever you're at war with someone and, especially when you come out on top like America has, you have a good sense that you can expect what's coming from an enemy. In this instance, they were able to use the planes against us and able to use our own nice way of going about things and not suspecting of other people, not suspecting of these terrorists. They're able to use all of that against us. And I could remember as a teenager wondering, like you were saying, Shannon, is this going to be more commonplace? And thinking how much of these terrorists are actually amongst us, and we have no idea.
No, and we still don't. Okay, and that's the problem. Mm-hmm. And you bring up some good points, caller, about how we grounded all the aircraft. And I remember thinking at that point that I'm glad, obviously, for the apparent reason to ground them. But I remember thinking that crop dusters. Okay, that was one of the things that came to mind. Okay, crop dusters.
Absolutely.
All right, because these crop dusters, I mean, you can get those planes all over the place.
Yeah.
All right, and I remember thinking, okay, good, ground all the planes, and that includes all the privately, because we don't know whether or not some of these pilots were out there with private, smaller planes like crop dusters with, you never know, poison. They could have been, had bombs themselves. There's a lot of other destructive methods that they could have used smaller planes for that very well could have been in the works. But when they grounded everybody, they could have that would have been it. They would have been shot down.
Well, think about what's happening right now. The crop dusters are flying right now for sugarcane, and we had crop dusters that were flying, not mine, but other people's, that we had to park that day. And it took a while to get everybody back in the air. But let me say this about my industry. We are still on a 9-12 mindset. It's a pain in the tail to the public. It's a pain in the tail to those of us in the business. But I know as an industry, we know what can happen. We know how bad things can be. And we work hard. We work as best as we can with the TSA and everybody else to make sure that aviation will never ever be used in that way again. And I know it's a pain to go to an airliner now. It is for me too.
Yeah.
But we don't ever want to see what we do for a living used as a weapon ever again.
Well,
yeah, good point.
And thank you, caller.
Thank you very much.
And of course, we may remember the TSA was created because of 9/11.
Yeah, that's right. So was ICE.
Yeah, so was I. And I think about what he just talked about, and because I had the recent trip with my wife to Jamaica, and we were a little inconvenienced, but you know what? If that's going to help protect us and save us from a situation of what's happening in 9/11, we'll be gladly inconvenienced. It'll be gladly in a situation where, hey, look, maybe the TSA person is a little bit ugly to us.
Yeah.
But you know what? If they're trying to keep us safe and they're doing their jobs effectively, it's okay.
It's okay with me too. And it makes you think, that was something that many people didn't consider. But have you ever heard of The Running Man?
Yes.
Okay, the movie The Running Man. Well, that book, I had read that book years before. And that's how the book ends.
Yeah.
Okay, the book ends with the main character crashing the plane into the government building. But the government was all in control. It was a good thing because the government was bad.
Quick commercial break. We'll get some more calls as we remember 9/11. Welcome back into the show, 232-1542, as we remember 9/11. Now, before we get back to the conversation, we do want to tell you about our friends over at Red Royal House Buyers. Look, if you're facing any situation and selling your home fast would help you, then please give them a call. They can close on your house at your convenience.
That's right. Here are some reasons why you should contact Red Royal House Buyers today. First off, they'll buy your house as is with cash. No fees, no commission, and you won't have to make any repairs. Most importantly, they will close on your timeline to meet your needs. Speak with one of their experienced professionals who can answer your questions.
Now, Red Royal House Buyers is a local trusted company and member of the Better Business Bureau. You can visit them online at redroyalhousebuyers.com, follow them on Facebook, or call them at 337-509-0040. That's 509-0040. You need to sell. They're ready to help.
Yeah. Okay, back to our conversation today being 9/11, September 11th. We're discussing, we're reminiscing, and we've got some other stories that we could get into in a little while about how 9/11 is right now. But we're kind of reminiscing, kind of going through the history, people's memory of what happened. Brandon and I are sharing our memories of how that day unfolded. And as the day grew on, and things kind of settled down, I guess. Well, when it got to be evening, dinner time, things kind of started to settle down a little bit. People had calmed themselves. It became at least reasonably apparent that the attacks had stopped. But everybody was still, at least myself, on edge.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Absolutely. I was still on edge, waiting for another report. And everyone, of course, was glued to the radio, glued to the television. And as the evening wore on, right at sundown, I guess you could say, maybe 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock or so, I left my house and I went riding around Lafayette. And earlier we were talking about the hurricane that was bearing down on the East Coast. And it reminded me a lot, driving through Lafayette, it reminded me a lot, if you've ever driven through Lafayette or any city right before a hurricane hits. No cars anywhere. Every business closed down. I remember thinking, I'm glad that I have gas because I couldn't even find, there wasn't even gas stations that were open. Everybody was closed down. Everybody was indoors and just desolate, spooky feeling with the city. And I just remember as I was driving down Johnson Street, which is never desolate. All right. I remember driving down Johnson Street. Well, this is what it looks like when you're at war. Okay. Because everybody thought at that moment, and reasonably so, well, now we are certainly at war. We have been clearly attacked at home on our homeland. And that was the prominent thought that I had in my mind. Well, this is what it looks like at night when you're at war. And that's another one of those really strong memories that I recall.
All right, we go back to the Cajun Harley hotline. Caller, you're up. Go ahead.
Man, thank you so much for taking my call. This one is very, very personal to me. I was on the radio at the time. The show Bobby Novosad in the morning, KSMB. I was producer Bill, and while it happened, and so the first plane hit, and we could see the TV. Now we're trying to get bits and stuff together, entertainment. And the first one hit, and we're like, "Oh, okay, well that's an odd thing that happened." And then the second one hit, and our hearts dropped, and then our phones blew up. And then what do? Do you go to do a bit of some comedy bit, or do you play a Britney Spears song? And I'll never forget the people calling. They would ask me questions like, are we safe? Crying. Is my son or daughter going to be deployed? How can I help? What can I do? And I'm having to take all these phone calls. And I will never forget 9/11. And it means something, and people have forgotten about it.
Yeah. Well, you're right. And as time goes by, the memories kind of fade. People don't remember a lot of the specifics from that day. I know that, as I'm sharing and Brandon's sharing what we recall about it, I'm sure that there's a lot of things that, time goes by, you don't remember every detail of the day. And so, but one of the things that we all, I think most people remember is, where you were you at work? Were you at home? Were you in a workplace that closed down right away? What were your thoughts? What were your emotions? What people tend to remember the most is their emotions. That's what is the most easy thing to remember is how, what was that struggle? Was it fear? Was it anger? Was it paranoia? What were you feeling at the time? And that's what people remember the most vividly.
Well, one thing to think about, too, is what has changed since then. Now, we talked a little bit about that, where we talked about the TSA also. The Department of Homeland Security was created after 9/11 as well. Also, you had the very controversial Patriot Act, which gave the government more of an opportunity to be able to, some people would say, spy on its citizens in the name of surveillance, in the name of safety. There's been some good changes that have come about as of 9/11 that have made it safer, but there's also been some things that have made people pause and have made people a little bit more worried as well, with like what I just mentioned, the Patriot Act and the government becoming a little bit more invasive in our lives. And so there are some lessons that we've learned from 9/11. There's some lessons that I think continue to be learned as people in the positions that they are in try to keep our country safer. Also the discussions that we've had about Islam and about Muslims. We've had some very interesting conversations even on our airwaves about that as well. You look across our country and you've got some people that have talked about 9/11 never forgetting, and then you have other people that say, well, you're offending Muslims if you do that. That's one college that comes to mind that did that recently. And so it's just brought up very interesting conversations. Some of these conversations have made us better. Some of them, I think, have made us a little bit worse off as a nation.
I agree. I think that the response, people's response emotionally and as citizens, as patriots, initially was very positive. You know, it brought us together in a way that we hadn't been in a very long time. You know, we hadn't had real division since the 60s, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, we had our problems, all right, but we hadn't had that real hard division in our country since the 60s. And when this attack occurred, everybody bonded together in a very, very patriotic and sincere way. Unfortunately, that started a chain reaction years later that led to extreme division because our response, remember the weapons of mass destruction and all that, and so that, and then of course in 8 years of the Obama administration created a lot of division, and now our division is continuing to be more extreme than it has been at least since I've been experienced in my lifetime. People in the generation before me, like my parents, tell me on a regular basis, you know, what we're experiencing right now is nothing new if you lived through the 60s. Okay, but I didn't live through the 60s. And so, nevertheless, you're right. I think that it has brought up a lot of positive reactions over the years, but unfortunately, it has also led to a lot of negative reactions. A lot of people really believe that that we were involved with this. Okay, the truthers that are out there believe that we were directly involved and that we helped plan the whole attack against ourselves.
232-1542, heading back to the Cajun Harley hotline. Caller, you're up. Go ahead.
Okay, good afternoon again. So mine's more of an emotional one. Shannon, you'll probably remember this. I was working in New Orleans on Bourbon at Patu's Cajun Bistro in the Cajun Cabin right across from Chris Owen. And when the planes hit, I was getting dressed for work, and my babysitter called and said, "Are you still going to work?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And he's like, "Well, turn on the TV." So I looked at the TV, and I called work. Yes, we were open, so I went to work. And as you all know, everything shut down. The entire city, the country shut down. And it was one of the busiest days, aside from special events, Mardi Gras, whatnot, that I ever worked there. And we had these two huge big screen TVs that pulled down. So they had it on the entire day. And what really gets me about the whole day, because emotionally, like, I became just fiercely loyal that day. One of my tables, I had 3 firemen from New Jersey.
Oh, wow.
And they sat there. And one of them, I asked how they were doing, and he just looked at me. And I asked him how he was doing, and he said, "We should be there. Our brothers are there, and our brothers are dying, and we're here." And he said, "I wish we were there. I wish we would have been in that building," he said, "because it'll never be the same." And so every year, every opportunity I've had to tell my students, if I was in the classroom, I would tell them, and I'm hating myself today because today is the first day that I did not retell that story. And because of that, a little bit of it died. But that is something that I will never forget, just their hurt and their feeling of betrayal because they weren't there with their ladder.
Right.
And they lost guys that day, and there was nothing they could do about it.
How frustrating for them.
It's just, that's something I'll never forget. And I'll remember that day, and I've been so adamant since that day to instill in my kids, you know, the love of country and the love of service and just the love of, you know, our freedoms, and which in turn, I think one of the reasons is why my son is in the military today. But, you know, I just can't help but tell my students, you know, you don't understand what happened. You weren't there to see when those buildings were collapsing. And my manager had two sisters that worked, one in the North Tower, one in the South Tower.
Mm-hmm.
He couldn't get in touch with either of them for days. One of his sisters, who always went to work early, was running late that day and missed her cab and was not in the building.
Wow. Yeah,
and
you hear a lot of stories like that.
Yeah.
The other sister was on vacation and was in Hawaii. He couldn't get in touch with them for several days. But I remember that day, and I just remember seeing him and seeing those firemen and just, what do you do or say?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What a unique position to be in. Thanks for sharing that with us. We really appreciate that.
All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and take this commercial break and come back, continue to remember 9/11 here on News Talk 96.5 KPEL.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. And we want to welcome some new sponsors here to Offsides. Chris Quibido. Chris Quibido with Centera Advisors is right here in Lafayette. And Chris has the financial advice you need to manage your money through a strategy that fits your individual needs.
Now, look, you may be working with a financial planner currently, and look, if you are, that is awesome. But do you truly know exactly how each investment is designed to work for you? What about your retirement plan? Your hard-earned money deserves a strategy, one that you truly understand.
Yeah, that's right. If you need a plan to get you on track for retirement, give Chris Quibido a call, 205-6656. Great new sponsor. Glad to have him on board. Okay, so back to our discussion about everyone's memories and what they really recall specifically about 9/11. I'll share another quick one with you. One of the things that stands out to me was that my son, Scott, was actually a patient at Shriners Hospital in Shreveport at the time. And I remember when Bush went to Barksdale, which was right there, in Bossier, right by Shreveport. And I remember calling my wife and saying, hey, and actually they were in a therapy session, a physical therapy session. She didn't know what had happened yet, And I was really nervous at the time because I remember thinking, all right, I'm glad that President Bush is at a base at Barksdale. I don't like the fact that my family is right there by him.
Yeah.
Because you start thinking that, or you're thinking, all right, well, maybe, drawing attention to that area could put my family at more risk. Yeah. Obviously, nothing like that happened, but it's just another one of those memories that stands out. I remember thinking, wait a minute, Bush is right there. My family's at Shriners Hospital in Bossier, in Shreveport, and nobody is exempt at this point.
Yeah. 232-1542. Back to the phone lines we go. Caller, you're up. Go ahead.
Hey, Brandon. Hey, Shannon.
Hey.
Good still, man. My wife woke me up because I was working night on that day, and she told me the Empire State Building is now the tallest building in New York City. And it was a state of disbelief for me. And when I saw what was going on the TV, it made me angry because 10 years earlier, I was, in the Navy and stationed on board an amphibious assault ship. We had just gotten back from the Gulf War, and we went to New York City completely. And I have a picture of me standing on Liberty Island with the Twin Towers in the background.
Oh, wow.
While they were burning?
No, this was before.
Before, okay. Yeah. All right, thank you.
Yeah.
I actually stood at the foot of the Twin Towers during that excursion, and it always, stood in my mind. And when I saw the Twin Towers burning and what was happening, I got very angry.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, I'll bet.
I wish we really could hear from you more, caller. Unfortunately, the phone line's kind of
not a very good connection.
Up. But we
appreciate that.
We're glad you got that out. Thank you. All right, 232-1542. Caller, you're up. Go ahead.
Hey, fellas. I was out in Los Angeles, actually, when it happened. And we had a place we used to go after work and have our pizza and beer. And there were two World War II veterans who used to always come drink with us. Yeah. One of them was out at sea out of Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941. And his name was Mo. And he told us how it felt to watch the Arizona on fire when he came back into harbor. And he was just so livid. He was yelling, "This is war." He was red in the face, and I had just never seen him so angry, obviously. But it was just a very sobering thought to be with a Pearl Harbor survivor when we were watching the towers burning, and to just see the fire in his eye and watch how history is. Sometimes it repeats itself, sometimes it rhymes, but it was just an amazing thing, and God bless all the people we lost that day.
Yeah, thanks
and
for
their families too.
Another unique story. Wow, how unusual. Fantastic.
Thank you, caller. Well, our last callers, one thing in common they had as well. We've talked a lot about the feelings of terror and the feelings of concern that we had, but they hit upon the feelings of anger that many of us had as well.
People were mad. Let me tell you. I remember having some conversations, one in particular with my brother, and boy, I mean, we were both raging.
Yeah.
And of course, everybody then is anticipating what our response is going to be.
Yeah.
And I remember another brother of mine I was speaking with a day or two later, and he was angry that we hadn't responded yet.
Yeah.
And I can hear him saying right now, I don't know what we're waiting for. And of course, we talked about it. I said, well, who do we go after? You're dealing with terrorists. You need to identify where they're from, because it's not like traditional warfare that we've had in the past.
Well, there's two things as it relates to war that come to my mind going through that time period. One of them was what you were talking about there, and the fact that it's one thing to be attacked from a known enemy. It's another thing to be attacked from someone who goes through innocent lives to pull the attack off.
Oh, yeah.
So we're trying to figure out exactly who the enemy is. And here's the other thing, because we know that this is in the Middle East. We know that, we're trying to figure out how Iraq and Afghanistan were involved. And of course, I'm talking about back in 2001.
Yeah, sure. It could have been any number of people or a combination of several of them.
And I'm thinking about this, and I'm thinking, well, the first George H.W. Bush, how he dealt with Iraq and how quickly the Iraq war went by, how would this Bush deal with Iraq and the Middle East as we move forward? Because remember, we talk a lot about Afghanistan now, but remember, there was so much concentration on Iraq back then.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And you didn't know who to point the finger to.
Yeah.
And so that's my point, that it was confusing at the time as to, okay, we're really mad, but who are we going to be mad at?
Yeah.
Okay, and that is another difference, like when we bring up Pearl Harbor and the parallel in being attacked here. The significant difference here is that Pearl Harbor was a base, a military base, okay? And so they were attacking military personnel, whereas here they're attacking innocent civilians, okay? And so they're not that the military personnel deserve the attack, okay? But when you intentionally target citizens as opposed to the military, that is very different in many ways.
And of course, also the Japanese had their flag, their logo on their planes, as opposed to our logo was on our own planes here being used against us.
Yeah, that's right. And they made no bones about telling everybody, oh yeah, we did it, and we're proud of it.
232-1542. All right, caller, you're up. Go ahead.
Gentlemen, a lot of the kids that were children then are now young adults, and a lot of them don't have an idea of what would happen, what's going on. I think a lot of it has gotten forgotten about, so I'm glad we're talking about it. But I wanted to say, that the terrorists, the definition of terrorist is to cause terror, and there are some young men and women who were children then, and I'm giving a shout out to my son and all his peers who grew up knowing what happened and wanted to fight against the enemy of America, who's very patriotic, and he's currently at Fort Benning in infantry training, and there was a summer surge with thousands of people, men and women now, because they accept women as well, in the Army infantry, who are patriots, who were just children when this happened, who are, being deployed in harm's way to protect our freedom. And so, hats off to all the first responders and to all the soldiers that are out there. But, I just want to say, I hope we never forget. It was a time when everybody on our block and everywhere in the city, American flags flying, and we were all united. There weren't Democrats and Republicans and, black and white or anything like that. It was just all Americans.
Yeah, good. Excellent point. Thank you very much. All right, we'll be right back here on Offsides.